I felt her breath on my ear, and heard words that made my heart race. Extra. The arrival. The transport shuttle's docking clamps echoed through Station Nexus like a metallic heartbeat. Marcus Chen pressed his palm against the porthole, watching the crystalline planet Stellara rotate below, its surface catching light like a jewel crafted by cosmic forces. 3 months. That's all his predecessor had lasted before requesting an immediate transfer with no explanation. Welcome to the edge of known space, Marcus muttered, hauling his engineering kit through the airlock. The station's artificial gravity felt lighter than Earth standard, giving his steps an unsettling bounce. The corridors curved in elegant arcs, walls embedded with strips of bioluminescent algae that pulsed in response to movement. Marcus had studied the schematics during his journey, but experiencing the hybrid technology firsthand made his engineer's mind race with questions. The observation deck sprawled before him like a transparent bubble suspended in space. He'd come here first, drawn by reports of malfunctioning environmental scanners. The main console flickered with data streams in multiple languages, some he recognized, others that seemed to shift and flow like living text. You must be the new engineer. The voice made him turn sharply. A woman stood in the doorway, but woman seemed inadequate. She moved with liquid grace, her skin holding a subtle pearl-like shimmer that caught the station's lights. Her eyes were pools of deep violet, flecked with gold that seemed to swirl when she tilted her head. Hair like spun moonlight cascaded over her shoulders. I'm Nyara Solenis, diplomatic liaison for the Celestine delegation. She extended her hand, and when Marcus shook it, her skin felt cool and smooth, sending an unexpected tingle up his arm. Marcus Chen. I was just checking the environmental systems. Perfect timing. She glided closer, her movements making no sound. This scanner has been giving false readings for days. She leaned past him to indicate the display, and suddenly she was close enough that he could feel the warmth of her breath against his ear. Here, she whispered, her finger tracing a pattern on the screen. The quantum resonance keeps shifting. Her voice carried layers he'd never heard before, harmonics that seemed to vibrate through his chest. His heart rate spiked, and he had to focus on breathing normally. She smelled like starlight and cinnamon, impossible but undeniable. I'll run a full diagnostic, Marcus managed, his voice rougher than intended. Nyara stepped back with a knowing smile. I'll leave you to your work. But Marcus. She paused at the doorway. Welcome to Nexus. I have a feeling your time here will be transformative. Midnight frequencies. The station's night cycle had settled over Nexus like a velvet shroud. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow, crouched beneath the communication array's main junction. For 3 nights straight, he detected anomalies in the transmission patterns, whispers of data that shouldn't exist, frequencies that made his instruments dance with impossible readings. You're working late again. He didn't jump this time. Somehow, he'd sensed Nyara's presence before she spoke, a subtle shift in the air that announced her arrival. She stood in the doorway of the communication center, wearing a flowing dress that seemed to capture and reflect the console lights like liquid starlight. These arrays, Marcus said, sliding out from beneath the panel. They're receiving something beyond standard channels. The patterns are almost musical. Her expression shifted, vulnerability flickering across her features. I need to trust you with something. She moved closer, her bare feet silent on the metal floor. Those transmissions, they're mine. Encrypted diplomatic communications that could prevent 3 systems from declaring trade war. Why not use official channels? Because someone on this station wants that war to happen. She knelt beside him, their faces inches apart. I need your help, Marcus. The encryption requires dual-species harmonics. A human voice paired with Celestine frequencies. She handed him a small device, their fingers brushing. I'll teach you the pronunciations. They must be perfect. She moved behind him, her hand resting lightly on his chest. Feel the resonance here when I speak. Her voice flowed like honey and starlight, words in her language that made his chest cavity hum. She leaned closer, her lips near his ear. Now you try. Shape the sounds like this. Her breath sent shivers down his spine as she guided him through each syllable. Better, she whispered after his third attempt. But the final note needs more. She turned his face toward hers, studying his mouth. May I? At his nod, her fingers traced his lips, adjusting their shape. Like you're tasting moonlight, she murmured. The proximity, her touch, the intimate darkness broken only by console lights, it all culminated when their eyes met. Marcus's hand found her cheek, thumb tracing the constellation of faint markings along her jaw that he just noticed glowed softly in the dim light. Nyara. I've wanted this since you arrived, she admitted, her voice barely audible. Their lips met, soft and tentative at first, then deeper as she made a small sound of pleasure that resonated through both their bodies. Her kiss tasted of alien spices and familiar longing, a contradiction that made Marcus pull her closer. The communication arrays hummed around them, frequencies aligning like lovers' heartbeats. When they finally parted, her eyes held flecks of silver he hadn't seen before. The transmissions can wait until tomorrow, she said, her fingers intertwined with his. Tomorrow, Marcus agreed, pulling her back for another kiss as Stellara's aurora painted colors across the observation windows, blessing their moment with cosmic light. The secret garden. Close your eyes. Nyara's hand was warm in his as she led Marcus through a section of the station he'd never seen on any schematic. They'd been meeting secretly for 2 weeks now, stolen moments between shifts, encrypted messages hidden in maintenance logs, kisses in empty corridors when the station slept. Where are you taking me? Marcus asked, trusting her enough to follow blindly. Somewhere that doesn't exist, she teased. At least, not officially. The air changed, became warmer, humid, alive with scents that made him think of rainforests and alien meadows combined. Now, she whispered. Marcus opened his eyes and gasped. They stood in a biodome that shouldn't be possible, a hidden sanctuary carved from the station's bones. Bioluminescent flowers carpeted the ground in waves of blue and gold, their petals pulsing in slow rhythms. Trees with crystalline bark reached toward a ceiling that somehow showed real stars, not the station's typical projections. How? 5 years of careful cultivation, Nyara said, pulling him deeper into her secret world. Flora from 17 planets, living in harmony. The station's previous engineer helped me hide it from the sensors. Understanding dawned. That's why they left suddenly. Someone discovered this. She nodded, leading him to a clearing where the flowers glowed brighter, responding to their emotional emanations. He was protecting me. This garden is illegal, unauthorized biological matter, hidden space allocation. But it's the only place that feels like home. They sat among the luminous blooms, and Nyara pulled her knees to her chest, suddenly looking fragile. I need to tell you something. About why I understand the pain I sometimes see in your eyes. Marcus waited, his hand finding hers among the glowing petals. 3 years ago, I loved someone from the Altarian delegation. It was forbidden. Our species had been enemies for generations. We met in secret, shared dreams of peace between our peoples. Her voice broke slightly. He chose duty over love. Married within his species for political alliance. The day he left, I thought I'd never feel whole again. Marcus pulled her against him, her head fitting perfectly in the curve of his shoulder. I lost someone too. Sarah. A hull breach during a routine maintenance check. She was standing right where the panel blew. If I'd been faster, seen the stress fractures. You blame yourself. Every day. Nyara lifted her face to his, tears making her eyes shimmer like galaxies. We're both so afraid of feeling this again. Terrified, Marcus admitted, his thumb wiping away her tears. The biodome speakers hummed with the station's ambient frequency, a deep, rhythmic pulse that sounded almost like music. Nyara stood, extending her hand. Dance with me. They swayed together among the responsive flowers, which brightened and dimmed with their movements. Her head on his shoulder, she whispered promises in both languages. Some he understood, others he simply felt in the way her body pressed against his. I'm falling in love with you, Marcus Chen, she breathed against his neck. Already fell, he whispered back, and kissed her as the garden bloomed around them in celebration. Gravitational pull. The delegation shuttle arrived without warning, sleek and predatory against the star field. Marcus watched from his maintenance station as figures in elaborate robes filed through the docking bay. The Emergency Peace Summit had drawn representatives from 7 systems, all of them tense, all of them watching each other with barely concealed suspicion. Nyara stood with the Celestine delegation, transformed. Gone was the woman who laughed in his arms just hours ago. In her place stood a diplomat in formal crystalline armor that reflected light in hypnotic patterns, her face a mask of professional neutrality. Yet when their eyes met across the bay, he saw the flash of longing she couldn't quite hide. For 3 days, they maintained the charade. Brushed fingers when passing data pads. Stolen glances during briefings. Once, in a crowded corridor, she pressed against him for just a moment longer than necessary, whispering, "Tonight, Garden, please." But tonight never came. Marcus was checking the lift systems when the lights flickered and died. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red. The lift shuddered to a halt between decks 4 and 5. "Marcus." Nyara's voice in the darkness. She'd been in the lift with him, along with 3 other delegates who'd exited at deck 3. "Power grid failure. Give me a minute." He pried open the maintenance panel, but his hands stilled when he felt her press against his back. "We're alone," she breathed. First time in 3 days. He turned in the crimson darkness to find her already removing the ceremonial armor, revealing the simple dress beneath. "Nyara, we should." She silenced him with a kiss that was desperate, hungry. 3 days of forced separation poured into the connection of their lips. Her hands tangled in his hair as he lifted her against the lift wall, her legs wrapping around his waist. "I've been going insane," she gasped between kisses. "Watching you, not touching you." His lips found her throat, that spot where her pulse fluttered with alien rhythm. She made a sound that was pure music, her body arching against his. The emergency lights painted her skin in shades of rouge and shadow, making her look like a goddess of some ancient fire. "Someone's been watching us," she whispered suddenly, even as her hands traced the planes of his chest. "Kalen, from my delegation. He keeps asking about you, about us." Marcus pulled back slightly, his engineer's mind clicking. "The power failures. There have been 17 in the past week. Always during crucial negotiations." "You think," her eyes widened. "The sabotage isn't random." A clang echoed through the shaft. Someone was manually operating the lift mechanism from above. Marcus quickly helped Nyara back into her armor as the lift shuddered to life. "We need to be careful," he whispered, his hand finding hers one last time. When the doors opened on deck 5, Kalen stood waiting, his silver eyes cold as distant stars. "Ambassador Solenis. I was concerned when the power failed." "How thoughtful," Nyara replied, her diplomatic mask perfect. But Marcus saw Kalen's gaze linger on her mussed hair, the slight flush of her skin. As she walked away, Kalen turned to Marcus. "Humans are so fragile. Accidents happen easily on stations like this, especially to those who reach for things beyond their grasp." The threat was clear as vacuum. Marcus smiled grimly. "Good thing I'm an engineer. I know how to fix things that are broken, and how to protect what matters." The 2 men stared at each other for a long moment before Kalen walked away, his robes whispering against the floor like a promise of violence to come. Constellation of 2-inch. Marcus's fingers flew across his console, pulling up 18 months of station logs. The pattern was there, hidden in microscopic power fluctuations and carefully edited security feeds. Every sabotage, every accident, all traced back to the same source. "I have it," he breathed into his comm garden, "now." Nyara arrived within minutes, but she wasn't alone. Kalen followed, his hand resting on what Marcus recognized as a Celestine neural disruptor. "I thought you might come here," Kalen said, his voice smooth as poisoned honey. "Your secret garden, Nyara. Did you think I didn't know?" "Kalen, please. You were meant to be mine." The diplomatic facade cracked, revealing raw fury beneath. 3 years I've waited. I orchestrated your former lover's marriage, arranged for his transfer. Everything to clear my path to you." Nyara's face went pale. You destroyed my happiness. I tried to give you better, but you chose this, human. He spat the word like profanity. These peace talks will fail. The war will force you home, back to traditional ways, traditional matches. Marcus stepped forward, but the disruptor swung toward him. The station's diplomatic AI has been recording everything, Marcus said calmly. Your confession, the evidence I've compiled. It's already transmitted to every delegation. Kalen's finger tightened on the trigger, but Nyara moved faster. A handful of pollen from the garden's defensive flora hit his face. He collapsed, paralyzed but conscious, as security arrived. Later, much later, after testimonies and arrests, after the peace accords were signed in the wake of exposed corruption, Marcus and Nyara stood in the observation deck where they'd first met. Your delegation is leaving tomorrow, Marcus said, his heart heavy. Yes. She moved closer, her hand finding his. But I'm not. He turned sharply. What? The station needs a permanent Celestine liaison. Someone who understands multiple species, who can bridge worlds. She smiled, that first genuine smile he'd seen in days. The position was approved an hour ago. Nyara, your home, your career. She silenced him with a finger to his lips. Home is where you create it. And my career. She gestured to the stars beyond the viewport. I'll be facilitating connections between species, fostering understanding. Plus, she leaned close, her breath warm against his ear just like that first day. I'll be with a human who makes my soul sing frequencies I never knew existed. A meteor shower began outside, cosmic dust burning bright against Stellara's atmosphere. Marcus pulled her close, their bodies fitting together perfectly despite their different origins. I love you, he whispered in her language, the pronunciation perfect now. And I love you, she replied in his, then added in the harmonic blend they'd created together, forever, across all the stars. They kissed as the meteors painted fire across space, two hearts from different worlds creating their own constellation. The garden would bloom, the station would turn, and their love would prove that some boundaries were meant to be crossed. In the days that followed, Marcus officially reported the garden's existence, but instead of ordering its destruction, the station commander designated it a botanical embassy, a symbol of unity. It became a place where species met, where differences were celebrated, where love had conquered fear. And in the center of it all, Marcus and Nyara built a life together, their whispered promises becoming shared realities, their love a bridge between the stars. The end.